The warning beacons had been there for thousands of years. They floated in the darkness of space, marking the boundaries of the forbidden sector. Every known civilization in the galaxy had added their own warnings to the ancient signals. "Stay away, do not enter. Death awaits inside." Commander Thelxa had never questioned these warnings before. Her species, the Vrexians, were known for following rules and respecting ancient wisdom. But today her scanner showed something impossible. Inside the forbidden sector where nothing should exist, there was a ship. "Run the scan again," she ordered, her forearms tapping nervously on the control panel. Her compound eyes focused on the display screen, hoping the reading was wrong. The junior officer obeyed. The result came back the same. A ship, definitely a ship, and the signature was unmistakable. "Commander," the officer said slowly, "the database identifies it as human design." Thelxa felt a chill run through her exoskeleton. Humans were one of the youngest species in the Galactic Council. They had only discovered faster-than-light travel 200 years ago. They were enthusiastic, creative, and sometimes reckless, but they were still learning the basic rules of galactic society. "That makes no sense," Thelxa said. "Humans would never enter the forbidden sector. They may be bold, but they are not suicidal." She sent an emergency transmission to the Galactic Council headquarters. Within hours, the council chamber on the neutral station of Convergence Point was filled with representatives from dozens of species. The holographic display showed the scan results, and the room erupted into chaos. "Impossible," shouted Ambassador Krevnor, a massive Dralthic warrior whose species valued strength and honor above all else. "Humans have only been in space for a fraction of a solar cycle. How could one of their ships be in the forbidden sector?" The human ambassador, a small woman named Ambassador Torres, looked genuinely confused. "We have no missions in that sector. We respect the ancient warnings. All our ships are accounted for." The council argued for 3 days. Finally, they made a decision that broke thousands of years of protocol. They would send an expedition into the forbidden sector to investigate. The risk was enormous, but the mystery was too dangerous to ignore. Thelxa was chosen to lead the mission. She selected a small team of specialists from different species. Among them was Dr. Sarah Chen, a human xenoarchaeologist who had spent her career studying ancient civilizations. Chen had black hair pulled back in a tight bun, and eyes that showed both excitement and fear. "I never thought I would see this day," Chen said as they prepared the expedition ship. "The forbidden sector has been my obsession since I was a child, and now we are going inside." Krevnor joined the team as security officer. He stood over 7 feet tall with thick armor-like skin and arms that could bend steel. "I do not trust this mission," he rumbled. The forbidden sector earned its name for a reason. But if humans are involved, we must know the truth. The expedition ship crossed the warning beacons 3 weeks later. Every crew member felt the weight of what they were doing. They were violating the oldest law in known space. As they entered the sector, their instruments went crazy. Space itself seemed wrong here. Readings fluctuated wildly. The stars looked distorted as if viewed through warped glass. "There," Thelxa pointed at the main display. Dead ahead, the ship appeared on their screens. It was enormous, easily 3 times the size of their expedition vessel. The design was clearly human, with the distinctive smooth lines and efficient structure that marked human engineering. But something was wrong about it. "Running age analysis," Chen said, her fingers flying over the console. She stopped. Her face went pale. "This cannot be right. What is it?" Thelxa asked. "According to carbon dating and material decay analysis, this ship has been here for at least 3,000 years. Chen looked up, her eyes wide with shock. 3,000 years ago, humans had not even invented basic electricity. They were still fighting with swords and arrows on their homeworld. The crew fell silent. The impossibility of it was overwhelming. As they drew closer, they could read the name painted on the hull in faded letters, the Prometheus Initiative. The ship was dark and dead, floating like a tomb in the void. But it was covered in symbols and markings that made Chen gasp. "Those symbols," she whispered. "They are proto-human, languages that existed on Earth thousands of years before recorded history. Languages we only know from fragments and guesses." Thelxa brought their ship alongside the derelict vessel. They prepared to dock and board. As they did, their communication officer suddenly called out, "Commander, I am picking up a signal from the ship. That is impossible. The ship is dead. Nevertheless, there is a signal. A repeating transmission. The officer played it over the speakers. What they heard made no sense. It was a mixture of sounds, mathematical sequences, and fragments of languages that should not exist. The pattern repeated over and over, endless and unchanging. Chen listened carefully, her training as a xenoarchaeologist helping her pick out patterns. "It is a black box transmission," she said, like a message in a bottle. "It has been broadcasting for thousands of years, waiting for someone to find it." "Can you decode it?" Thelxa asked. "Some of it. The mathematical parts are universal. They are coordinates, I think, and warnings." "Lots of warnings." Chen paused, listening more carefully. "And something else. A phrase that keeps repeating in multiple dead languages." "What does it say?" Chen translated slowly, her voice barely a whisper. "We came from tomorrow. Forgive us. Remember us. Beware what follows." Krevner growled low in his throat. "I do not like this. I do not like this at all." But it was too late to turn back. The airlocks were connecting. They were about to board a ship that should not exist, from a species that should not have been capable of building it, carrying a message from an impossible past. Thelxa sealed her environmental suit and checked her equipment one final time. "Whatever we find in there," she said to her team, "the galaxy will never be the same." The airlock opened with a hiss. Beyond it lay darkness and secrets that had waited 3,000 years to be discovered. The interior of the Prometheus initiative smelled of cold metal and stale air. Emergency lights flickered to life as the boarding team entered, activated by sensors that somehow still worked after 3,000 years. The lights cast long shadows down corridors that seemed to stretch farther than they should. Dr. Sarah Chen was the first to notice something wrong. "Commander Thelxa, are you seeing this?" "Seeing what?" The Vrexian commander asked, her suit sensors scanning for threats. "The dimensions. According to our external scans, this corridor should end in 50 meters, but I can see at least 200 meters ahead." Chen pulled out her handheld scanner. "Space inside this ship does not match space outside." Krevnor grunted. "Human technology should not be capable of this. Even our most advanced species cannot bend space like this." They moved deeper into the ship. Every step felt wrong. The gravity shifted unpredictably, sometimes pulling them to the floor, sometimes making them feel weightless for a few seconds. The corridor walls were covered in more of those ancient symbols, glowing faintly with their own light. "These symbols are not just decoration," Chen said, stopping to examine them closely. "They are mathematical formulas. Equations I have never seen before. They are describing something about space-time folding." Delxa's compound eyes studied the symbols. If humans built this ship, they had knowledge far beyond what the Galactic Council possesses even now. "How is that possible?" They found the first body in a side corridor. It was human, wearing a uniform that had somehow not decayed. The body was perfectly preserved, frozen in time. Chen knelt beside it carefully. "Female, maybe 30 years old when she died," Chen said, studying the body with her medical scanner. "But look at this." She pointed to several features. "The bone density is incredible. Muscle structure far more developed than any human I have ever seen. Her lungs are larger. Her heart is modified." "Modified how?" Krevner asked, leaning in. "Like she was designed to survive in extreme conditions. High gravity, low oxygen, extreme temperatures. No planet in charted space has these conditions." Chen looked up at her companions. "This woman is human, but she is different from any human alive today." They found more bodies as they explored. All were similarly modified, all perfectly preserved. The ship felt more like a tomb with every corridor they passed. The main cryostasis bay was enormous. Hundreds of pods lined the walls, each containing a sleeping human. The pods were still active, their displays showing steady life signs despite the thousands of years that had passed. "This is impossible," Delxa breathed. "No cryostasis technology can maintain life for this long." Chen moved from pod to pod, checking the displays. Each one showed vital signs, stable and unchanging. These people are not just frozen. They are held in some kind of temporal stasis. Time is not passing for them at all. She stopped at one pod and gasped. The display showed detailed biological information. These modifications. These people were engineered for war. For survival in conditions that would kill anyone else. They are soldiers. Krevnor studied the sleeping warriors with respect. "I have seen many warriors from many species. But these humans were built for combat beyond anything I know. What war were they fighting?" A computer terminal near the cryo bay flickered to life as they approached. Chen sat down and began accessing the ship's logs. The language was human but ancient. She had to use her translation software to decode it. "The ship's logs are damaged, but I can recover some entries," she said, her eyes scanning the screen rapidly. They mentioned something called the seeding protocol. References to timeline anchor points. They talk about preventing something called the convergence. "What is the convergence?" Thelxa asked. "I do not know." But they were terrified of it. Chen pulled up more files. "Here, a fragment from the captain's log. We have successfully traveled backward. The calculations were correct. We arrived 3,000 years before the war begins. We will hide in the forbidden sector until the time comes. Our mission is clear. Seed humanity across the timeline to ensure our survival." "Traveled backward?" Krevnor repeated. "Backward through time?" "That is what it says." Chen continued reading. They were not exploring space. They were exploring time. This ship did not come from human space. It came from human future. The implications were staggering. Every member of the boarding team felt the weight of this discovery. Humans were not a young species learning to walk among the stars. They were refugees from a war that had not happened yet. Chen accessed another file. This one showed weapons specifications. The more she read, the paler she became. "The weapons bay. We need to see the weapons bay." They found it on the lower decks. The bay was massive, filled with weapons that looked both familiar and alien. Chen recognized human design principles, but the technology was far beyond anything humanity currently possessed. "These are not just guns," Krevnor said, examining a rifle-like weapon. "These are reality-breaking tools. This weapon does not shoot projectiles. It shoots compressed probability fields." "And this one," Thelxa said, pointing to another device, "appears to manipulate quantum states at a distance, a weapon that could unmake matter itself." Chen found a console and accessed the weapons database. According to these files, these weapons were standard infantry equipment. Not experimental. Not special forces, standard. "Future humans fought with technology that makes gods seem weak," Krevnor said quietly. "What enemy required such weapons?" They found partial files describing the enemy. Something that existed outside normal space and time. Something that consumed entire realities. The files were corrupted, but the fear in the writing was clear. Chen was about to access another file when Thelxa called out from across the bay. "Everyone, come here now." They gathered around a cryopod that stood separate from the others. The pod was open, empty, but unlike the other equipment, this pod showed recent activity. "According to these readings," Thelxa said, studying the display, "this pod was opened 6 days ago." Silence fell over the team. They looked at each other, the realization slowly dawning. "Someone is alive on this ship," Chen whispered. Krevnor immediately went on alert, his weapons ready. "Where are they?" Thelxa scanned the area. There, footprints in the dust, leading deeper into the ship. The footprints were human-sized. They led away from the cryo bay, down a corridor that descended into the heart of the vessel. The trail was fresh. Whoever had left that pod was moving through the ship, awake and active. "Should we follow?" Chen asked, though she already knew the answer. "We have no choice," Thelxa replied. "We need to know who they are and what they are doing." They followed the footprints. The trail led them through corridors that became stranger and stranger. The walls pulsed with that same faint light. The gravity became almost non-existent. They were approaching the core of the ship. Finally, the footprints led to a massive door. It was sealed, but the access panel showed recent use. Someone had opened this door just hours before. On the door was writing in multiple languages, all saying the same thing. "Core access. Authorized personnel only. Timeline preservation protocols in effect." Krevnor looked at his companions. "Whatever is behind this door, it is the heart of the ship's secrets." Chen placed her hand on the access panel. It scanned her palm, and surprisingly, the door began to open with a deep grinding sound. "How did it accept you?" Thelxa asked. Chen stared at her hand. "I do not know, but I think this ship has been waiting for me." The door opened fully, revealing a chamber beyond. Inside, they could see a massive quantum computer, still running, its lights blinking in complex patterns. And standing before it, illuminated by the glow of 1,000 displays, was a figure. A human woman, very much alive, turned to face them. She smiled, but it was a sad smile. "Hello," she said in perfect galactic common language. "My name is Elena. I have been waiting a very long time for you to arrive." Elena looked human, but something about her was different. She moved with absolute confidence, and her eyes held the weight of years beyond counting. She wore a simple uniform identical to those on the preserved bodies they had found. But on her it looked alive, purposeful. "You followed the footprints," Elena said, not as a question but as a statement of fact. "Good, the ship's AI predicted you would. We have been waiting for the right people to find us." Dr. Sarah Chen stepped forward. "How are you alive?" "Those cryopods have been running for 3,000 years. Longer than that, actually," Elena replied. "I was not in cryostasis. I was in temporal suspension. A very different thing. Time has not touched me because I exist slightly outside of time." She gestured to the massive quantum computer behind her. "This is what has kept me alive. This is what has kept the ship hidden. And this is what will show you the truth." Commander Thelsa raised one of her forearms. "Before we see anything, you need to explain who you are and why you are here." Elena nodded. "Fair enough. I am Lieutenant Commander Elena Vasquez, Tactical Officer of the Prometheus Initiative. I was 28 years old when we left on this mission. That was 3,147 years ago." She paused. "I am the last crew member on active duty. Everyone else is in the cryopods waiting." "Waiting for what?" Krevner demanded, his hand near his weapon. "For the war to begin again," Elena said simply, "or more accurately, for it to begin for the first time. Time travel makes grammar difficult." She turned to the quantum computer and touched a panel. The entire chamber lit up with holographic displays. Images filled the air around them, showing star systems, timelines, and mathematical equations that hurt to look at. "Let me show you something that your Galactic Council does not know," Elena said. "Something humanity itself does not remember." A holographic figure appeared in the center of the room. It was a man in his 50s wearing a captain's uniform. His face was tired but determined. "This is Captain Marcus Chen," Elena said. Sarah Chen gasped. "Chen, like my family name?" Elena smiled at her. "Not a coincidence, Dr. Chen, but let me play the message. The captain recorded this 3,000 years ago, but he addressed it to whoever would find us in the correct timeline." The hologram began to speak. His voice was strong and clear. "If you are watching this, then events have proceeded as we hoped. You have found the Prometheus Initiative. You have entered the forbidden sector, and you have questions that will shake the foundations of everything you believe." Captain Chen took a breath. "Let me tell you the truth about humanity. We did not evolve on Earth, we were placed there. The holographic display showed images of Earth, but wrong somehow. Different continents, different climate patterns. Humanity evolved on a planet called Origin, in a different part of the galaxy, in a timeline that no longer exists. We became a great civilization. We mastered physics, conquered disease, explored the stars. We built an empire that spanned galaxies." The captain's expression grew dark, and then we discovered time travel, and that is when the war began. The display showed glimpses of impossible battles, ships that existed in multiple timelines at once, weapons that erased causes and effects, soldiers fighting enemies that had not been born yet. "We fought an enemy called the Convergence," the captain continued. "It was not a species or a nation. It was something that existed across all possible timelines simultaneously. It consumed realities, fed on the collapse of possibility. We fought it for generations, and we lost. The images showed worlds dying, stars going dark, entire sections of space-time collapsing into nothingness. We faced a choice," Captain Chen said. "Let the Convergence consume all of existence or do something desperate. We chose desperation. We chose to erase ourselves." Thelsa spoke up, her voice shocked. "What do you mean, erase yourselves?" Elena paused the recording. "Exactly what he said. The original timeline where humanity evolved on Origin still exists, but it is doomed. The Convergence won there, so we took newborn human children and scattered them backward through time. We placed them on Earth, on dozens of other worlds, creating new timelines where humanity would evolve differently, slowly, naturally, without attracting the Convergence's attention." "You seeded your own species across time," Chen whispered. "Yes, the Prometheus Initiative was one of 12 seed ships. We carried frozen embryos, genetic material, and technology. We traveled back 3,000 years and placed humanity on Earth. We removed all genetic memory. We made sure your species would grow up not knowing what they truly were." Elena restarted the recording. Captain Chen continued speaking. "If you are watching this, then our plan worked. Humanity survived. You grew on Earth, you developed naturally. You became something new, something that the convergence would not recognize. He paused. But there is a problem. The convergence is not bound by linear time. Eventually it will find you. It will notice the similarities. It will come. The hologram looked directly at them, as if seeing across 3,000 years. The forbidden sector is not forbidden by ancient aliens. It is forbidden by us. We created this quarantine zone to hide our insertion point into your timeline. The warning beacons were placed by future humans to keep everyone away from the moment of our arrival. Because if anyone disturbed this moment, the entire timeline could collapse, Krevnor growled. Then we have already doomed you by coming here. No, Elena said. You coming here was always part of the plan. The captain knew that eventually, humanity would expand far enough to find us, and when that happened, it would mean the convergence was close. Chen felt cold. How close? Elena brought up new displays. They showed tiers in space-time at the edges of the forbidden sector. Reality itself was unraveling in small patches. Very close, Elena said quietly. These tiers appeared 6 months ago. That is when I woke up. The ship's AI detected the convergence's signature and activated my pod. I have been monitoring the situation since then. What is the convergence? Thelxa asked. What is it made of? That is the terrifying part, Elena replied. We never fully understood it. It exists outside normal physics. It feeds on collapsed timelines, on possibility that never happened. Some of our scientists thought it was an accidental creation. Others believed it was inevitable, a natural consequence of time travel. She looked at each of them. But what matters is that it is coming. And this time there are no more timelines to run to. Then what do? Chen asked. Very close, Elena said quietly. These tiers appeared 6 months ago. That is when I woke up. The ship's AI detected the convergence's signature and activated my pod. I have been monitoring the situation since then. What is the convergence? Thelxa asked. What is it made of? That is the terrifying part, Elena replied. We never fully understood it. It exists outside normal physics. It feeds on collapsed timelines, on possibility that never happened. Some of our scientists thought it was an accidental creation. Others believed it was inevitable, a natural consequence of time travel. She looked at each of them. But what matters is that it is coming. In this time, there are no more timelines to run to. Then what do? Chen asked. Elena touched another panel. A schematic appeared, showing the Prometheus Initiative's core systems. The ship has a weapon, one last option, but using it requires a choice that no one should have to make. Krevnor studied the schematic. This is a temporal disruption device. If I am reading this correctly, it does not destroy enemies. It destroys timelines. Yes, Elena confirmed. It can sever a timeline from existence. Remove it from the web of possibility. Make it so that it never happened. The implications hung in the air like a weight. Chen spoke slowly. You are saying we could erase the timeline where the convergence exists? Theoretically, yes, Elena said. But that timeline is the original human timeline. The one where we evolved on origin. If we erase it, we erase our own beginning. We become a species with no origin point, a paradox existing in reality purely through quantum uncertainty. That is insane, Thelxa said. Yes, Elena agreed. But we are running out of options. The convergence has found you. Your modern human ships have started using technology similar to what original humanity used. You are calling attention to yourselves. Within months, maybe a year, the convergence will arrive in force. She looked at Dr. Chen with strange intensity. And that is why you are here, Sarah Chen, descendant of Captain Marcus Chen. Your family line was specifically preserved. Your career path, your obsession with the forbidden sector, none of it was random. You were bred across 3,000 years to be here in this moment, capable of making the choice. Chen felt her legs weaken. What choice? Whether to tell the galaxy the truth, Elena said. Whether to activate the weapon. Whether to save humanity by erasing our own past. She gestured to the cryopods in the distance. Everyone in those pods volunteered for this mission knowing they might never wake up. They gave up their entire timeline to give your version of humanity a chance. And now you are asking us to return the favor, Krevnor said grimly. Elena nodded. The convergence is coming. We need to decide what humanity is willing to sacrifice to survive. Again. The hologram of Captain Chen spoke one final time. To whoever finds this message. To my descendant, if our genetic planning worked, I am sorry. I am sorry we left you this burden. But I believe humans are survivors. We always have been. We always will be. Make the choice that lets humanity endure. That is all I ask. The hologram faded. The chamber fell silent except for the quiet hum of the quantum computer. Thelxa looked at her team. We need to report this to the Galactic Council immediately. That might be a mistake, Elena warned. If the Council learns what humanity truly is, they might choose to eliminate you rather than risk the Convergence's attention. She is right, Krevnor said reluctantly. Fear makes people dangerous. If the galaxy learns that humans attracted an enemy that eats timelines, they will not take chances. Chen stared at the schematic of the weapon. Her mind raced with the implications of everything they had learned. Humanity's entire existence was a lie, a beautiful, desperate lie told by people who loved their species enough to erase themselves. And now that lie was unraveling, and the truth was more terrifying than anyone could imagine. The expedition team stayed aboard the Prometheus Initiative for 3 more days. Elena showed them everything. The ship's complete logs, the genetic engineering plans that had shaped modern humanity, the evidence of battles fought across impossible fronts. With each revelation, the weight on their shoulders grew heavier. Dr. Sarah Chen spent hours in the ship's archive room, studying records of the civilization that humanity had once been. She saw images of cities that floated between dimensions, scientific achievements that made current galactic technology look primitive, art and culture from a species that had conquered death, disease, and distance. We were magnificent, Chen whispered, scrolling through the files. Our ancestors were truly magnificent. Elena stood beside her watching the displays. Yes, but magnificence attracted attention. The Convergence noticed us because we became too advanced. We burned too brightly. Tell me about the Convergence, Chen said. The captain's message did not explain what it actually is. Elena pulled up a series of scientific reports. Our best scientists studied it for decades. What we learned was terrifying. The Convergence is not alive in any traditional sense. It is more like a natural law of physics. When intelligent species develop certain technologies, particularly time travel and dimensional manipulation, they create ripples in space-time. The Convergence feeds on those ripples. So it is drawn to advanced civilizations? Specifically to civilizations that break the rules of causality. Once you start changing timelines, creating paradoxes, folding dimensions, you light up like a beacon. The Convergence comes, and it does not destroy you. It does something worse. Chen looked at her. What could be worse than destruction? It collapses your timeline into probability foam. Everything your species ever did, every choice you ever made becomes uncertain. You exist in a state of quantum, maybe, alive and dead simultaneously, real and unreal. Elena's voice was quiet. We found worlds like that. Entire civilizations trapped in probability loops, unable to fully exist or fully die. They're people living the same moments over and over, each time slightly different, never able to break free. Chen felt sick. That is horrible. Yes, so when we realized we could not defeat the Convergence, we chose something radical. We chose to become small again. Simple. We reset humanity too before we had dangerous technology. We hoped that if we grew slowly, naturally, we might develop differently, become something the Convergence would not recognize. Meanwhile, Commander Thelxa worked with Elena to analyze the current threat level. They stood in the observation deck, watching the displays that showed reality tiers forming at the sector's boundaries. How long before the Convergence fully arrives? Thelxa asked. Difficult to say exactly, Elena replied. Time does not work normally around the Convergence, but based on the expansion rate of these tiers, I estimate we have between 8 months and 1 year before it can manifest physically in this dimension. What happens when it arrives? Elena pulled up a simulation. It showed a wave spreading out from the forbidden sector, consuming everything it touched. Stars went dark, planets dissolved, entire star systems became probability ghosts. It will start here at the insertion point where we change the timeline. Then it will spread. The Convergence will try to collapse the entire human timeline branch. Every world humanity has touched, every species you have contacted, every choice your civilization has made will be unmade. Thelxa felt fear, a rare emotion for her logical species. The entire Galactic Council would be affected. Yes, by seeding humanity in this timeline, we connected your existence to ours. If the Convergence collapses humanity, it will take portions of everyone else with it. The damage will be catastrophic. Then we must tell the Council. They need to prepare. Elena shook her head. Prepare how? The convergence cannot be fought with conventional weapons. We tried that. We had weapons that could destroy stars, and it did nothing. The convergence exists outside the rules we can manipulate. In another part of the ship, Krevnor explored the weapons bay more thoroughly. He had brought up detailed specifications on the arsenal, and what he read both impressed and disturbed him. One weapon caught his attention, a rifle that fired rounds phased across 7 dimensions simultaneously. The specifications claimed it could hit targets that had not yet arrived in normal space. Another device could create localized time loops, trapping enemies in seconds that repeated forever. These are not weapons, Krevnor muttered to himself. These are nightmares made manifest. He heard footsteps and turned to see Elena approaching. You understand them, Elena said. It was not a question. I am a warrior. I understand weapons, but these are beyond warfare as I know it. Krevnor gestured to the arsenal. These were made by people who had stopped thinking about enemies as living beings. These are tools for erasing problems from existence itself. You are right. By the end, we were not fighting a war. We were fighting against the concept of our enemy existing. We became what we hated. Elena looked at the weapons with sadness. That is another reason we chose to reset. We had become monsters in our desperation to survive. Krevnor studied her. You speak of this with regret, but you still serve. Why? Because monsters or not, we were trying to save everyone, not just humanity. The convergence does not care about species or morality. It consumes everything. Elena met his gaze. I stayed awake to finish the mission, to give new humanity a chance to do better than we did. And if new humanity makes the same mistakes, then at least we tried. On the 4th day, the team gathered in the command center to make their decision. They had to determine what to tell the Galactic Council and what to do about the threat. Chen spoke first. We have 3 options. 1, we tell the Council everything and hope they help us. 2, we hide the truth and try to deal with the convergence ourselves. 3, we activate the temporal weapon and attempt to erase the original human timeline. Option 1 will cause panic, Thelxa said. The Council will fracture. Some species will want to help. Others will demand we eliminate all humans immediately to save themselves. Option 2 leaves us unprepared, Krevnor added. The convergence is beyond our ability to fight. Hiding the truth just delays the inevitable. And option 3 is genocide, Chen said quietly. Erasing the original timeline means killing trillions of people. People who existed, who had lives and loves and dreams. We would be murderers on a scale never seen before. Elena listened to them debate. Finally, she spoke. There is a 4th option, one that the original Prometheus crew prepared for but hoped would never be needed. They turned to her. The temporal weapon can do more than erase timelines. It can also merge them. Take 2 separate timelines and fold them together, combining their histories. Elena pulled up a schematic. If we merge the original human timeline with this one, we create a single, stronger timeline. The convergence tracks individual branches, but a merged timeline might be too complex for it to fully grasp. What would happen to the people? Chen asked. Memories would merge. The humans sleeping in the cryopods would wake in this timeline with their knowledge and skills intact. Modern humanity would suddenly remember a past they never lived. It would be chaos, but everyone would survive. And the convergence? Thelxa asked. Uncertain. It might be confused enough to give us time, or it might consume both timelines at once. This is not a perfect solution. They fell silent, each considering the options. Finally, Krevnor spoke. I have fought in many battles. I have seen warriors face impossible odds. The humans I know, the modern humans, they are young and inexperienced. But they have something. He looked at Elena. They have hope, something your timeline lost. What are you suggesting? Elena asked. I suggest we tell humanity the truth, all of it. Let them decide their own fate. Krevnor straightened. Warriors deserve to know what they are fighting for. If humans are truly descended from the greatest civilization in history, they deserve to know. And they deserve the chance to prove they can do better. Chen nodded slowly. He is right. We cannot make this choice for an entire species. Thelxa was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, Very well. We will return to the council. We will tell them what we found, and we will let humanity decide how to face what is coming. Elena looked at them, and for the first time since they had met her, She smiled with genuine warmth. Captain Chen would be proud of you. All of you. As they prepared to leave the ship, Elena stopped Chen. Sarah Chen, before you go, I need you to understand something. Your great ancestor, Captain Marcus Chen, he encoded instructions in your family's genetic line. You have abilities you have not discovered yet. Enhanced pattern recognition, immunity to temporal paradox effects, mental shielding against probability manipulation. Why? Chen asked. Because someone needs to pilot the Prometheus initiative if we use the weapon. Someone immune to the side effects of timeline manipulation. Someone who can navigate probability without losing themselves. Elena placed a hand on Chen's shoulder. You were bred to be a weapon against the convergence, just like this ship. Not because we wanted to burden you, but because we loved humanity enough to give future generations every possible advantage. Chen felt the weight of 3,000 years of planning pressing down on her. What if I am not strong enough? Then you will fail and humanity will end. But I do not think you will fail. I have maintained this ship for 3,000 years waiting for you. I believe you are exactly who we need. The expedition team returned to their ship. As they pulled away from the Prometheus initiative, Chen looked back at the ancient vessel floating in the forbidden darkness. Elena stood in one of the observation windows watching them leave. She raised her hand in farewell. Behind the Prometheus initiative, the tears in reality grew larger. The convergence was coming. And for the first time in 3,000 years, humanity would have to face the nightmare that their ancestors had fled. But this time they would face it together, old humanity and new, with all the galaxy watching, and with Elena's words echoing in their minds. We were magnificent once. Perhaps you can be magnificent again. The Galactic Council chamber had never been so full. Every species, every colony world, every minor faction had sent representatives. Word of the discovery had spread despite attempts to keep it quiet. Everyone knew something terrible had been found in the forbidden sector. Commander Thelxa stood at the central podium, her forearms steady despite her nervousness. Beside her stood Dr. Sarah Chen and Krevnor. Behind them, on the massive display screens, was a live feed from the Prometheus initiative. Elena stood on the bridge of the ancient ship ready to corroborate their story. Members of the council, Thelxa began. What we are about to tell you will challenge everything you believe about humanity and about the nature of our reality. For the next 3 hours, they presented their findings. They showed the ship's logs, the genetic evidence, the timeline maps. They explained how humanity had not evolved naturally on Earth, but had been planted there by time travelers from a doomed future. They showed images of the original human civilization and its terrible war against the convergence. The council erupted into chaos. Accusations flew. Some species demanded humans be expelled from the galaxy immediately. Others called for humanity's extinction to prevent the convergence from finding them. A few stood in support, arguing that humanity deserved a chance to survive. Ambassador Torres, the human representative, stood silent through it all. Her face was pale, processing the revelation that her entire species was built on a lie. Finally, the head of the council, a wise and ancient Zelthari named Supreme Arbiter Morn, called for order. His crystalline form pulsed with light as he spoke. This is unprecedented, Morn said, his voice resonating through the chamber, but accusations and panic solve nothing. Dr. Chen, you stated that the convergence is already approaching. Show us the evidence. Chen activated new displays. The screens showed real-time sensor data from the forbidden sector. The tears in reality had grown significantly in just the past week. They now spread like cracks in glass, fragmenting space-time itself. This is happening now, Chen said. Our estimates suggest we have less than 6 months before the convergence can fully manifest in our dimension. When it does, it will attempt to collapse the human timeline. And because humanity has integrated with galactic society, that collapse will damage everyone's timelines. A Vrexian scientist spoke up. How is that possible? Our timelines existed before humanity joined the council. Timelines are not isolated, Elena explained from the screen. They branch and interweave. When humans made first contact with other species, your timelines became connected. Choices you made because of human interaction, technologies you developed from human ideas, children born from mixed species relationships, all of these create connections. If humanity's timeline collapses, those connections will try to unmake themselves. Reality will fracture trying to maintain consistency. Krevnor stepped forward. I have reviewed the tactical data. The convergence cannot be fought with conventional weapons. We cannot evacuate from it. We cannot negotiate with it. It is a force of nature like gravity or entropy. The original humans fought it for generations with technology far beyond ours, and they lost. Then what do you propose? Asked a Dralthic general, Krevnor's own species leader. That we simply wait for extinction? No, Chen said. We propose using the weapon aboard the Prometheus initiative. The temporal disruption device, she explained the options. Erase the original timeline and become a paradox species. Merge the timelines and create something the convergence might not recognize, or attempt a third option that Elena had revealed to them during the return journey. There is one more possibility, Elena said from the screen. The weapon can be used to sever our section of space-time from the greater quantum foam. Isolate us completely. The convergence feeds on connections between timelines. If we cut all connections, it cannot reach us. What would that mean? Arbiter Morn asked. It would mean no more time travel, no more dimensional manipulation, no more accessing alternate timelines. We would be locked into one single stream of causality forever. Elena's face was grim. It would also mean abandoning the original human timeline to its fate. Everyone there, all those people, would die when the convergence consumes them. The council chamber fell into stunned silence. They were being asked to make a choice that would define the future of all galactic civilization. Ambassador Torres finally spoke, her voice shaking. You are asking us to choose between killing trillions of our own ancestors or potentially dooming everyone to the same fate. Yes, Elena said simply. That is exactly what I am asking. Because those are the only choices left. Over the next week, humanity itself debated. The revelation of their true origin had spread across every human world. Some people celebrated the discovery that humanity had once been a great civilization. Others were horrified by the deception. Religious leaders struggled to reconcile their beliefs with the timeline manipulation. But slowly, a consensus emerged. Humans, by nature, were survivors. They had survived the original war by being willing to forget who they were. Now they needed to survive by remembering. Dr. Chen worked with Elena to prepare the Prometheus initiative for its final mission. They would need to wake the crew from cryostasis. 347 original humans, warriors, and scientists from the lost timeline would join the modern galaxy. The day came when the first pods opened. Chen watched as the ancient soldiers emerged, their eyes taking in a world they had never seen. They had volunteered for this mission knowing they might never wake. Now they faced a reality where their sacrifice had created a new humanity that did not know it needed saving. One of the first to wake was a woman named Commander Arya Volkov, the Prometheus's second in command. She looked at Elena with tears in her eyes. You stayed awake, Arya said, all this time. You kept watch. Someone had to, Elena replied. Welcome to the future. It needs saving again. As more crew members woke, they were briefed on the situation. Many were shocked by how young and hopeful modern humanity seemed. Others were saddened by how much knowledge had been lost. But all of them understood their duty. Meanwhile, the Galactic Council made its decision. With humans abstaining from the vote, the Council voted to support the severance option. They would cut all connections to alternate timelines and lock reality into a single causality stream. It was the safest option, even if it meant abandoning the original timeline. But Chen had other ideas. She had spent days studying the genetic modifications her ancestors had made to her family line. She had discovered abilities she never knew she had. The capacity to navigate probability, the mental discipline to maintain coherence across timeline shifts. She was, as Elena had said, bred to be a weapon. The night before the weapon was to be activated, Chen went to see Elena privately aboard the Prometheus. I want to try the merge option, Chen said. Elena shook her head. The council decided. Severance is safer but wrong. The original timeline has billions of people. They are still fighting, still trying to survive. We owe them a chance. Chen met Elena's eyes. You have protected this ship for 3,000 years. Let me protect them now. The merge could fail. It could kill everyone in both timelines. Yes, but it could also work, and if it works, humanity becomes whole again. We become strong enough to face anything. Chen placed her hand on the console. I have the genetic modifications. I can pilot the ship through the merge. You know I can. Elena was quiet for a long time. Then she said, Captain Chen would be proud of you. and probably furious that his descendant is as reckless as he was. Is that a yes? That is a yes. But we do it my way. I pilot, you navigate, we do this together. The next day, Chen stood before the Galactic Council and told them of the change in plans. The chamber erupted in protest. They accused her of risking everything for sentiment, of choosing ancestors over the living. But then Krevnor stood. I stand with Chen. Warriors do not abandon their brothers. If original humanity is still fighting, they deserve our help. Thelsa rose next. I stand with Chen, she is correct. Severance is survival. But survival without honor is not worth the cost. One by one, others stood. Not all humans. Not even a majority. But enough. Representatives from a dozen species rose to support the more dangerous option. Arbiter Morn watched the chamber. Finally, he spoke. Very well. We will attempt the merge. But Dr. Chen, if this fails, there will be no one left to learn from our mistake. Then we had better succeed, Chen replied. The Prometheus initiative began its final mission 1 week later. Chen and Elena sat in the pilot seats with Arya and the awakened crew manning the stations. The ship's temporal drive powered up, drawing energy from the quantum foam of reality itself. Outside, the tears in space-time had grown massive. The convergence was visible now. A darkness that was not darkness. A presence that hurt to perceive. It moved like oil spreading across water, consuming everything it touched. Beginning timeline merge, Elena announced. Engaging temporal field, the ship began to glow. Reality around it warped and twisted. Chen closed her eyes and opened her mind to the probability streams. She could feel both timelines now. The original dying in the convergence's embrace. The new young and hopeful. She reached out and began to pull them together. The merge was not gentle. Memories collided. Histories rewrote themselves in real time. Across human space, billions of people suddenly remembered two different pasts. They remembered Earth as a peaceful development and Earth as a refugee settlement. They remembered ancestors who had evolved naturally and ancestors who had fled across time. The cognitive dissonance was overwhelming. People screamed, fainted. Some went mad from the paradox. But Chen held on. She navigated the probability streams, finding paths where both timelines could coexist, where the contradiction became a strength instead of a weakness. In the original timeline, the last humans fighting the convergence suddenly felt hope. They felt connection to something beyond their doomed existence. They felt their timeline merging with another, and they added their strength to it. The convergence sensed the merge and tried to stop it. It pushed against the forming bridge between timelines. Reality screamed. Stars flickered. Planets phased in and out of existence. It is fighting us, Elena shouted over the alarms. The convergence knows what we are doing. Then we fight harder, Chen replied. She pushed deeper into the merge, accepting pain that felt like her brain was being torn apart. In the council chamber, Arbiter Morn and the others watched the displays in horror and awe. They could see both timelines struggling to become one. They could see the convergence trying to prevent it. And then in a moment that would be remembered forever, they saw the merge complete. The two timelines collapsed into one. Not erased. Not destroyed. Combined. Every human suddenly had two sets of memories, two histories, two paths that had led to the same present. And more importantly, they had the knowledge. 3,000 years of advanced technology. Strategies for fighting the convergence. Weapons that could wound probability itself. Humanity transformed in an instant from a young species to a civilization that remembered its own future. The convergence recoiled. It had been tracking a simple timeline. Now it faced something complex, paradoxical, impossible. A species that had evolved naturally and had been seeded artificially. A civilization that was both new and ancient. The contradiction confused it. And in that confusion, humanity struck. The awakened original humans knew the convergence's weaknesses. They had spent generations learning how to hurt something that existed outside causality. Now they taught modern humanity those lessons. Every human ship in the galaxy suddenly upgraded their weapons, modified their engines, changed their tactics. The convergence tried to advance, but humanity pushed back, not with traditional warfare, but with probability manipulation. They created timelines where the convergence had never existed and forced those timelines to become real. It was warfare on a level the galaxy had never seen. And humanity, impossible humanity, paradox humanity, was winning. Chen woke 3 days later in a medical bay. Elena sat beside her bed, looking older somehow despite her temporal suspension. Did we win? Chen asked. We are winning, Elena corrected. The convergence is retreating. It cannot fully process what humanity has become. We have bought ourselves time. How much time? Enough, maybe generations. Maybe forever. Elena smiled. You did it, Sarah Chen. You saved 2 humanities. And you scared the convergence, something we thought was impossible. Chen sat up slowly. What happens now? Now we teach. Now we prepare. Now we make sure that if the convergence ever returns, we are ready. Elena handed her a datapad. The council wants to meet with you. They want to understand what humanity has become. What have we become? Terrifying, Elena said with pride. Humans were always good at survival. But now you are a species that survived by erasing yourselves and then brought yourselves back. You died and came back stronger. That is the most frightening thing in the universe. Chen looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there the convergence licked its wounds. And somewhere humanity, both old and new, prepared for the next battle. The warning beacons around the forbidden sector changed their message. No longer did they say stay away. Now they said something different in every language known. They were here. They saved us. They came from tomorrow and yesterday. They are human. They are terrifying. They are hope. Remember them, respect them, and pray you never have to fight them. Because the galaxy had learned a truth that would echo through history. Humanity at its best was inspiring, but humanity when threatened, humanity with nothing left to lose, humanity fighting for survival across time itself, was the most dangerous force in all of creation. And the most terrifying part was not what they had done. It was knowing they would do it again if they had to. Without hesitation, without regret, because that was what humans did. They survived. No matter the cost, no matter the odds. They survived, and now the entire universe knew it. The stars looked different from the observation deck of the USS Constellation. Lieutenant Commander Eric Miller stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching the approaching lights of the alien vessel. His stomach tightened. After 20 years in Navy intelligence, he never thought he'd be humanity's representative at a first contact meeting. Nervous? Asked Captain Kate Summers, stepping beside him. As the ship's military psychologist, she had been added to the team at the last minute. Wouldn't you be? Eric replied, not taking his eyes off the growing speck of light. We're about to meet aliens who could destroy our planet if they wanted to. The Varaxian ship was massive, at least 3 times the size of the Constellation. It gleamed like polished obsidian against the blackness of space. Earth had detected the aliens 6 months ago, when their signals began appearing on deep space monitoring equipment. After weeks of basic language exchange, this meeting had been arranged. They seem peaceful enough, Kate said. Their communications suggest they're more curious than hostile. Eric nodded but didn't feel reassured. I've studied every transmission. There's something condescending in their tone, like they're talking to children. The ship's intercom crackled. Lieutenant Commander Miller and Captain Summers to the main airlock. Our guests have arrived. The Varaxians were tall, with gray-blue skin that seemed to shimmer under the ship's lights. Their eyes, 4 of them, arranged in a diamond pattern, blinked, independently of each other. The lead alien wore an ornate uniform with symbols Eric couldn't decipher. I am Zexthal, ambassador of the Varaxian hegemony, the alien said through a translator device. Its voice sounded metallic but understandable. We bring greetings from the 17 worlds of our coalition. Admiral Frank Doyle, the highest-ranking officer on the Constellation, stepped forward. Welcome aboard the USS Constellation. I'm Admiral Doyle. This is Lieutenant Commander Miller and Captain Summers, who will be your main contacts during your stay. The alien's upper eyes focused on Eric while the lower pair examined Kate. Your vessel is quaint, Zexthal said. We have studied your transmissions. Your species is young but shows potential. Another Varaxian stepped forward, smaller and dressed in simpler clothing. I am Korvek's chief researcher. I have been studying your culture with great interest. Its speech seemed more enthusiastic. Your stories, especially, are fascinating. Eric felt a sudden unease. Our stories? Yes, Korvex continued. Your horror and war narratives. Such imagination. Such primitive fears manifested in creative ways. My team has collected thousands of examples. Zexthal made a sound that the translator didn't catch, something like laughter. Your species invents such elaborate fantasies about combat and violence. It is amusing. Admiral Doyle's smile remained fixed, but Eric caught the slight tightening around his eyes. Perhaps we should continue this discussion in the conference room. We've prepared refreshments suitable for your biology. As they walked through the ship's corridors, Eric noticed how the Varaxians seemed to look down at everything, literally and figuratively. They stood nearly 7 feet tall and moved with fluid grace that made the humans seem clumsy by comparison. In the conference room, the Varaxians settled onto specially designed chairs. Several more of their kind had joined them, scientists, military officers, and cultural experts according to their introductions. "We have reviewed your historical records," said a Varaxian wearing what appeared to be a military uniform. "Your methods of warfare are interesting but extremely inefficient." "How so?" asked Admiral Doyle, his voice carefully neutral. "You fight on the ground face to face. You use explosives that destroy resources. You employ psychological tactics that would never work on advanced minds." The alien officer's upper eyes blinked in sequence. "We have evolved beyond such approaches." Eric noticed Kate taking careful notes, her expression thoughtful. During the next few hours, the Varaxians explained their coalition, 17 planets spanning 3 star systems, united under a single government. They had existed for over 2,000 years, expanding gradually and incorporating new worlds into their hegemony. "And these worlds all joined willingly?" Eric asked. Zexthal's 4 eyes blinked in an unsettling pattern. "Most saw the benefits of our protection and guidance. Some required convincing." A chill ran down Eric's spine. After the meeting, Corvex approached Eric with a small device. "I would like to show you something," the alien said, activating. A holographic display. Images of human books, movies, and games appeared, all centered on war, horror, and survival. "Your species spends much time imagining threats and violence," Corvex said. "Why do humans frighten themselves with stories about monsters and brutal warfare?" Eric considered his answer carefully. "Maybe because preparing for the worst helps us survive." Corvex made that same untranslatable sound, like laughter but hollow. "But these scenarios are impossible. These tactics would never work against an advanced civilization." "Perhaps not," Eric said. "But imagination has saved us many times." Later that night, Eric met with Kate and Admiral Doyle in a secure room. "Their attitude concerns me," Eric said. "They're dismissing everything about us, our technology, our military, even our stories." Kate nodded. "It's textbook colonizer behavior. They see us as primitive natives. I caught their military officers actually smirking during your presentation on Earth's defense capabilities." Admiral Doyle looked grim. "We need to prepare for the worst. Their ship has weapons capabilities far beyond ours. I've already contacted Earth Command." "What did Corvex want with you?" Kate asked Eric. "He's collecting our fiction. War stories, horror, survival narratives. Seems to find them childish." Eric frowned, but there was something else, almost like he's trying to understand what makes us tick. Over the next few days, more Varaxians arrived. Scientists, military observers, cultural experts. They all shared the same dismissive attitude toward human capabilities. Eric found Corvex in the ship's library downloading military history books. "Your people fought world wars against yourselves?" The alien seemed both fascinated and appalled. "We did," Eric admitted. "Humanity has a complex history. And these horror stories, monsters that hunt in darkness, invisible threats, psychological warfare, these are entertainment? Sometimes the best way to face our fears is to explore them through fiction." Corvex made a dismissive gesture. "Childish fears. Advanced civilizations outgrow such things." 6 months later, a fleet of 50 Varaxian ships appeared in Earth's orbit. Their message was simple. Earth would join the Varaxian hegemony as a resource world or face pacification. As Admiral Doyle organized Earth's defense forces, Eric remembered Korvex's dismissive words about human warfare and horror stories. The aliens had studied human fiction as entertainment, never realizing they were reading a warning. Admiral Frank Doyle stood in the underground war room beneath the Rocky Mountains. Screens around him showed the 50 Varaxian ships in Earth's orbit. 6 months of peaceful talks had ended with an ultimatum: surrender or be conquered. "They've given us 48 hours to decide," Eric Miller said, joining him at the central table. "Their ambassador says they prefer a peaceful transition of power." Doyle's face hardened. "I bet they do. How's our defense plan coming?" "Military." Analyst Lisa Ward approached with a tablet. Her eyes were red from lack of sleep. "Not good, sir. Their technology outmatches ours in every category. Their ships have energy shields we can't penetrate with our current weapons." "What about their ground forces?" Doyle asked. "Based on the data they've shared, they have mechanized infantry with advanced armor and energy weapons. 1 Varaxian soldier might equal 10 of ours in a direct fight." Eric looked at the tactical displays. "But they don't expect to fight at all, do they?" Lisa shook her head. "No. From my conversations with their military observers, they expect us to surrender. When I asked about their combat experience, they mentioned standard pacification protocols that have worked on other planets. They've been studying us for months," Kate Summers added, joining the group. "But they've focused on our mainstream military tactics and conventional warfare. They've completely dismissed our history of asymmetric warfare, resistance movements, and guerrilla tactics." A new voice joined the conversation. "That's our advantage." Captain Jack Russell, a Special Forces commander with 20 years of experience, stepped forward. "They think they know how we fight. They don't." The next day, world leaders gathered to discuss the Varaxian ultimatum. Most faces on the video screens looked defeated. "Their technology is too advanced," the European Union representative said. "Fighting would only lead to massive civilian casualties." The Chinese president nodded in agreement. "Perhaps we should negotiate terms that would protect our people, even if we lose our independence." Admiral Doyle stepped up to the microphone. "With respect, surrendering is exactly what they expect. They've studied our conventional capabilities and determined we can't win, but they've missed something critical." He nodded to Eric, who began presenting images from the 6 months of cultural exchange. "The Varaxians have been collecting our stories, our books, films, games, particularly war stories and horror. They find them amusing, like children's tales." Eric pulled up video of Korvex laughing at human war films. "They think these are just entertainment. They don't realize these stories reflect real human capabilities and historical tactics." Captain Russell took over. "I've analyzed their military doctrine. It's built on overwhelming force and technology. They have no concept of the unconventional warfare humans have perfected over centuries. Their soldiers have never faced an enemy that fights from the shadows, that adapts, that uses their own strength against them." "Are you suggesting we can win against their technology?" the Russian president asked skeptically. "No," Doyle said firmly. "I'm suggesting we can make victory so costly they'll be forced to negotiate. We need to show them that humans aren't the primitive children they think we are." Over the next 24 hours, a plan formed. On the surface, Earth would appear to be considering surrender. Meanwhile, military forces would prepare for a very different kind of war. In a secure room, Lisa Ward met with hackers from around the world. "Their ships use a communication system similar to our quantum networks. We need to find a way in." In another facility, Dr. Olivia Green studied Varaxian biological samples they had willingly provided during cultural exchanges. "Their auditory range is different from ours," she explained to her team, "and their visual processing has weaknesses we can exploit. They evolved on a world with less environmental variation than Earth." Captain Russell's Special Forces teams began training with unusual equipment. "These aren't weapons they'll expect," he told his soldiers as they practiced with devices that looked more like tools than guns. Eric Miller found himself working with Hollywood directors and video game designers. "We need to understand exactly what they found so amusing about our horror stories," he told the creative team. Because we're about to show them those nightmares are based on reality. When the 48 hours were nearly up, Ambassador Zexthal arrived at the United Nations for Earth's answer. The alien stood tall and confident, all four eyes blinking in that unsettling pattern. "We hope you have chosen wisely," Zexthal said to the assembled human representatives. "The hegemony offers protection and guidance to developing species such as yours." The UN Secretary-General stepped forward. "We have a counter-proposal. Earth wishes to join your hegemony as an equal partner, not a subject world." Zexthal's upper eyes narrowed. "That is not possible. Your civilization is too young, too undeveloped. You have not even mastered interstellar travel." "Yet, we have mastered something you haven't," Admiral Doyle said, joining the conversation. "And what might that be, human?" the alien asked with clear disdain. "Survival against all odds." Zexthal made that untranslatable laughing sound. "Your confidence is misplaced. We have studied your military capabilities extensively. You cannot stand against us." "You've studied our conventional forces," Doyle agreed. "But have you studied our history? Vietnam, Afghanistan. The countless times a technologically superior force was defeated by people who refused to fight by the expected rules?" For the first time, Zexthal seemed uncertain. "Your primitive guerrilla tactics would not work against our technology." "Perhaps not," Doyle said. "But are you willing to risk finding out? To risk the lives of your soldiers to take a planet that might instead become a valuable ally?" Before the alien could respond, the lights in the UN building flickered. On every screen and device, including the alien's translator, a simple message appeared. "We are already in your systems." It was a bluff mostly, but Lisa's team had managed to briefly penetrate the outer layers of the Varaxian communication network. Zexthal's four eyes blinked rapidly. "This is unexpected. I must consult with the Hegemony Council." When the alien left, Eric turned to Doyle. "That won't buy us much time." "No," Doyle agreed, "but it shows they can be surprised, and surprised enemies make mistakes." 3 hours later, the answer came. The Varaxian fleet launched its first attacks against Earth's satellite defense systems. As orbital weapons platforms were destroyed one by one, Korvek sent a personal message to Eric. "I have recommended a full study of human warfare throughout history," the alien researcher wrote. "But the military command believes this unnecessary. They say humans will fight as all primitive species fight, directly and predictably." Eric sent back only one reply. "You should have paid more attention to our horror stories." The invasion of Earth had begun. The first Varaxian ships entered Earth's atmosphere 3 days after the invasion began. They looked like giant metal teardrops, gleaming in the sunlight as they descended toward major cities. Humanity's air defenses had been quickly overwhelmed. Just as the aliens had predicted, what they hadn't predicted was that humanity wouldn't use their air defenses at all. "Let them land," Admiral Doyle had ordered. "Let them think the path is clear." Marine Sergeant Paul Martinez watched from his hidden position as 5 alien ships landed in the fields outside Chicago. He and his squad had been hiding underground for 2 days, waiting. The tunnel system they'd hastily built was inspired by those used in the Vietnam War, something the Varaxians had dismissed as primitive and unsuitable for modern combat. "All units hold position," came the whispered command through his earpiece. "Wait for them to deploy fully." The alien ships opened, and troops marched out in perfect formation. Their armor gleamed silver and blue, and they carried weapons that looked like sleek rifles made of the same material as their ships. The Varaxians moved with confidence, clearly expecting no resistance. "They're not even in combat formation," whispered Luis, one of Paul's soldiers. "They're parading." "They think this is a peacekeeping mission, not a war," Paul replied. "That's their first mistake." The Varaxian commander stood at the front, scanning the area with all 4 eyes. It seemed confused by the lack of resistance, or even people. Chicago appeared abandoned. "All units, execute Operation Nightmare," came Admiral Doyle's voice through all communication channels. Across the globe, at each Varaxian landing site, humans emerged from hiding. not to fight directly but to implement the strangest battle plan in Earth's history. In Chicago, Paul's team activated devices designed by Dr. Olivia Green. The small machines emitted sounds at frequencies that humans couldn't hear, but that hit the Varaxians' sensitive auditory range perfectly. The effect was immediate. The alien soldiers began looking around in confusion, some clutching at the sides of their heads. Sound weapons deployed, Paul reported. Moving to Phase 2. Underground tunnels suddenly opened beneath the aliens' feet. Not all of them, that would be too predictable, but just enough to create chaos in their formation. Varaxians fell into the pits, their perfect lines broken. Similar scenes played out at landing sites around the world. In Paris, the aliens found themselves caught in simple but effective traps. In Beijing, they faced buildings rigged to collapse in carefully planned ways. In Rio de Janeiro, the very environment was turned against them as the humid air was filled with compounds that interfered with their armor's sensors. None of these tactics would work for long. The Varaxians were smart and would adapt. But humanity didn't need to win. They just needed to create enough doubt and fear to force negotiations. The USS Invincible, a submarine deep in the Pacific Ocean, Captain Diane Wells monitored the global situation. Her vessel had been chosen as a mobile command center, specifically because the Varaxians, focused on space warfare, had largely ignored Earth's oceans. The first phase is working better than expected, she told Eric Miller, who had joined her team. They're completely disoriented by our approach. Eric nodded, watching the data streams from around the world. They expected us to either surrender or fight conventionally. They have no concept of our history with asymmetric warfare. On one screen, they watched live footage from London. The Varaxians had landed in Hyde Park, but instead of finding military resistance, they encountered simple holographic projectors, showing scenes from human horror movies. To humans, these would be recognized as fiction. To the aliens who had never understood the concept of horror entertainment, the effect was confusing and unsettling. Psychological warfare, Kate Summers explained, pointing to biometric data being collected from captured Varaxian equipment. They're experiencing something like fear, though their biology processes it differently. In orbit, the Varaxian fleet commanders were growing frustrated. Their ground troops reported chaotic conditions, nothing like the simple pacification they had expected. The humans are not fighting as predicted, a Varaxian general reported to Ambassador Zexthal. They're using methods not found in their military databases. Impossible, Zexthal replied. We studied their tactics extensively. They're fighting like the creatures in their horror narratives, said Corvex, who had been monitoring the situation with growing concern. They're fighting from shadows, using our expectations against us, exploiting weaknesses we didn't know we had. On the ground, the Varaxians began to adapt. They adjusted their sensors to detect the tunnel systems and started using scanning technology to find hidden humans. But each time they adjusted, humanity changed tactics. In what had once been Detroit, a Varaxian commander led a full company to clear out a reported human stronghold. They found an abandoned factory filled with mannequins posed in disturbing ways. While they were confused by this apparent waste of effort, the real attack came, not with guns, but with simple chemical compounds that reacted with their armors, cooling systems, forcing them to shed their protection or risk overheating. Paul Martinez and his squad observed from a distance as the aliens struggled with their suddenly malfunctioning equipment. They still think they're fighting a conventional war, Paul said. They're looking for an enemy they can shoot. When do we actually engage? Luis asked. Not until we have to. Our job is to make them question everything, their intelligence, their technology, their understanding of humans. The Varaxian ship hovering above suddenly fired energy weapons at the factory, completely destroying it and the surrounding area. They're getting desperate, Paul noted. That's good. Aboard the USS Invincible, Eric received a communication from Corvex. The alien researcher seemed troubled. Your species fights in ways not documented in your military records, the message read. Where did you learn these tactics? Eric sent back a simple reply. We told you in our stories, you just weren't listening. By the end of the first week, the Varaxians had secured only a fraction of their expected territory. Their casualties weren't high by the standards of war, but for a species that expected minimal resistance, each loss was shocking. "They're calling an emergency meeting of their command structure," Lisa Ward reported, based on intercepted communications. "We've confused them, but they'll adapt eventually. Their technology is still far superior." Admiral Doyle nodded grimly. "Then it's time for Phase 2. They've seen our nightmares. Now let's show them our monsters." The order went out worldwide. Operation Nightmare was now moving to its second phase. Humanity was about to show the Varaxians why they should have paid more attention to those horror stories they found so amusing. 2 weeks into the invasion, the Varaxian commander Keldash called an emergency meeting aboard the main fleet ship. Holographic images of battlefield reports floated around the command center as officers from various landing zones reported their findings. "This is unacceptable," Keldash said, his four eyes blinking in an angry pattern. "How can a pre-interstellar species cause such problems for our forces? The humans are not fighting according to any known doctrine," said his second-in-command. "They avoid direct conflict. They set traps. They use our own technology against us." Korvex, who had been invited to provide cultural insight, stepped forward. "I believe they are using tactics described in their fictional stories, the ones we dismissed as primitive entertainment." Keldash made a dismissive gesture. "Fiction cannot be the basis for effective warfare. Yet we have lost nearly 15% of our ground forces with almost nothing to show for it." Another officer countered. "We control less than 5% of their major population centers." Outside Phoenix, Arizona, Colonel Greg Bennett prepared the next phase of humanity's defense. Special operations teams had gathered from around the world, bringing with them equipment that looked nothing like standard military gear. "Are we really going through with this?" asked Lieutenant Steve Carson, looking at the specialized gear laid out before them. Greg nodded. "The Varaxians studied our conventional weapons and tactics. They prepared for those. They didn't prepare for what scared us in our own stories." The equipment included modified combat suits designed to resemble creatures from humanity's darkest nightmares. Some had extra limbs attached that moved with the soldiers' movements. Others contained technologies that altered voices or created visual effects that would confuse Varaxian sensors. "Remember," Greg told his troops, "this isn't about killing them. It's about making them question everything they thought they knew about humans. It's about creating fear." Michelle Peterson, who led one of the Special Forces teams, picked up her helmet. It had been modified to display different facial images that would shift and change in ways that Varaxian visual processing would find deeply disturbing. "Their psychology is different from ours," she reminded her squad. "What scares us might not scare them." But Dr. Green's team found something interesting in their biology. They have an instinctive fear response to rapid, unpredictable movement and certain sound patterns. As night fell, Operation Nightmare's second phase began. The Varaxians, used to fighting in daylight with their superior technology, suddenly faced a new kind of attack. In the forests outside Vancouver, Varaxian troops patrolled an area they thought was secure. Their sensors detected nothing unusual, until strange sounds began to emerge from the darkness. The sounds matched nothing in their databases. Not animal calls, not human voices, but something in between that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Then the attacks began. Human soldiers in modified armor moved in ways that confused Varaxian motion tracking. They appeared and disappeared, never staying in one place long enough to be targeted. Their armor, painted with light-absorbing materials, made them nearly invisible to standard scans. "What is this?" a Varaxian soldier asked, its voice showing stress for the first time. "This is not how humans fight in their military records." Aboard the USS Invincible, Eric Miller watched the reports coming in from around the world. The Varaxians were experiencing something they had never faced before: actual fear. "We're inside their decision loop now," Admiral Doyle said, studying the tactical displays. "They plan, we change. They adapt, we shift again." Lisa Ward pointed to data streams from captured Varaxian communication devices. "They're trying to understand what's happening. Their commanders are demanding explanations for why humans are fighting like She paused, reading the translation. Like the nightmare creatures from our entertainment. Eric couldn't help but smile. They thought our horror stories were just fantasies. They never realized those stories were how we prepare ourselves for the worst. How we face our fears by exploring them. In orbit, Keldash made a decision that would change the course of the war. Deploy the restricted weapons, he ordered. We will end this quickly. His officers looked shocked. The Hegemony Council has not authorized extinction-level weapons for this world, one protested. I am not suggesting extinction, Keldash replied. Only enough force to break their resistance. Use the atmospheric modifiers. On Earth, the sky began to change. Clouds formed in unnatural patterns as Varaxian ships released chemicals designed to alter weather patterns. Storm systems of unprecedented power began to form over major human population centers. But humanity had planned for this too. Dr. Olivia Green's team had studied Varaxian atmospheric technology from the limited data shared during the cultural exchanges. They're trying to control our weather, she told the Defense Council via secure communication. But they don't understand Earth's complex atmospheric systems. Their models are based on more predictable planets. Captain Diane Wells directed the USS Invincible to a new position. Launch the countermeasures, she ordered. Across the oceans, specially designed submarines released compounds that interacted with the Varaxian chemicals, creating effects the aliens couldn't have predicted. Instead of destroying human cities, their weather weapons created conditions that interfered with their own ship's sensors. In London, now partially occupied by Varaxian forces, Special Forces operator Michelle Peterson led her team through abandoned subway tunnels. They carried devices designed by Earth's best scientists based on reverse-engineered Varaxian technology. Remember, she told her team, we're not trying to defeat their entire army. We just need to create enough uncertainty that they question their approach. Her team emerged in the heart of the Varaxian command post. Instead of attacking with conventional weapons, they activated devices that broadcast directly into the Varaxian communication network. The signal contained images and sounds from humanity's darkest horror creations, but modified to target Varaxian sensory systems. The effect was immediate. The alien soldiers began to move erratically, their coordinated actions breaking down. As their sensory inputs became confused, Michelle's team slipped away before they could be caught, but the damage was done. Reports of similar attacks came in from Varaxian outposts around the world. In his command ship, Keldash received the disturbing reports. This is impossible, he said, watching video feeds of his troops in disarray. How can they know our neurological vulnerabilities? We never shared that data. Korvex, who had been analyzing human responses, looked troubled. I believe they figured it out by watching how we react to their world. They are more observant than we realized. This ends now, Keldash decided. Prepare the final phase weapons. We will not be defeated by a species that doesn't even have interstellar travel. But as his crew moved to obey, warning alarms sounded throughout the ship. Somehow, humans had gained access to their communication systems. On every screen aboard every Varaxian vessel, the same message appeared, translated into their language. You should have paid attention to our stories. This is only the beginning. 1 month into the invasion, the Varaxian fleet hung in Earth's orbit like wounded predators. Their once perfect formation was now scattered and defensive. On the planet below, their ground forces had withdrawn from most major cities, consolidating into fortified positions. Keldash stared at the holographic display of Earth with all 4 eyes narrowed in frustration. What had begun as a simple pacification had become the worst military disaster in Varaxian history. 28% of our ground forces lost, reported his second-in-command. 17 ships damaged beyond repair, and we control less than 2% of the planet's strategic locations. How? Keldash demanded, slamming his hand on the console. How could primitives do this? Korvex, who had spent the past weeks analyzing human tactics, stepped forward. I believe we fundamentally misunderstood humans from the beginning. We thought their violent stories were fantasy. They were not. They were history and preparation. Andrea. Earth. Admiral Doyle gathered with his command staff in the underground war room. The monitors showed Varaxian forces retreating across the globe. They're regrouping, Lisa Ward said, studying the tactical displays. Probably preparing for one final push with everything they have left. Then we need to end this before more people die on either side, Doyle replied. It's time for the final phase. Eric Miller looked up from his communications panel. Sir, we're receiving a message from the Varaxian command ship. They're requesting a direct conversation with our leadership. Doyle nodded. Put it through. The main screen flickered to life, showing Kel Dash and several other Varaxian leaders. Their usual confident posture was gone. They looked tense, even by alien standards. Human leaders, Kel Dash began, his translator making his voice sound flat and mechanical. The current conflict has proven costly for both sides. We propose a temporary cessation of hostilities to discuss terms. Doyle and Eric exchanged glances. This was what they had been fighting for, not a complete victory, which was impossible against the Varaxians' technology, but a chance to negotiate as equals rather than conquered subjects. We are willing to discuss terms, Doyle replied carefully. But first we need to understand why you're willing to talk now. Kel Dash's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. Your species has demonstrated unexpected capabilities. The hegemony wishes to avoid further losses while we reassess. 3 days later, representatives from Earth and the Varaxian hegemony met on neutral ground, an aircraft carrier in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. The location had been chosen carefully. It demonstrated human military capability while remaining non-threatening. Admiral Doyle led the human delegation, with Eric Miller, Kate Summers, and diplomat Alan Rhodes at his side. The Varaxians sent Kel Dash, Ambassador Zexthal, and to everyone's surprise, Korvex. Before we begin formal negotiations, Korvex said as they all took their seats, I wish to understand something. How did you know our vulnerabilities? Our physical and psychological weaknesses? Kate Summers smiled slightly. We watched. We listened. When you shared information about your biology during cultural exchanges, you thought you were being generous with a primitive species. We were studying, you just as carefully as you were studying us. But the tactics, Kel Dash insisted, the psychological warfare, the way you seemed to know exactly how to disrupt our sensory systems, that information was never shared. No, Eric agreed. But you shared enough for us to figure out the rest. Humans are very good at finding patterns and exploiting weaknesses. It's how we survived on a planet full of predators. Which brings me to my report, Korvex said, turning to address both delegations. I have completed my analysis of human history and behavior. My conclusion is that we severely underestimated this species. He activated a holographic display showing scenes from Earth's history, wars, disasters, explorations. Humans evolved on a planet with extreme environmental variations, constant natural disasters, and thousands of competing species. Their history is a continuous struggle for survival. What we mistook as primitive entertainment, their horror and war stories, are actually cultural tools for preparing each generation for threats. Ambassador Zexthal looked troubled. Are you suggesting humans are naturally more violent than other species? No, Korvex replied. I am suggesting they are naturally more resilient, more adaptive. Where other species might surrender when faced with overwhelming technology, humans become more creative, more determined. They don't fight like a military. They fight like a species that has been fighting for its existence since it first evolved. The negotiations lasted for days. The Varaxians, no longer approaching from a position of unquestioned superiority, were forced to treat humans as equals. Earth would not join the hegemony as a subject world, but would establish diplomatic relations as an independent planet. On the final day, as the formal agreement was being prepared, Eric found Korvex studying a collection of human books. Horror, novels, war memoirs, survival guides. I still don't understand why you find these entertaining, the alien said, holding up a dog-eared copy of a horror novel. Eric thought for a moment. I think we tell scary stories to prepare ourselves for real fears. It's how we face the darkness, by exploring it in safety first. Korvex made a gesture that Eric had come to recognize as thoughtful consideration. My recommendation to the Hegemony Council will be to study human culture much more carefully before approaching any other worlds. You are the first species we've encountered that became more dangerous when threatened, not less. We're not naturally violent, Eric clarified. We just don't give up easily. No, Corvex agreed. You certainly don't. When the agreement, soon to be known as the Earth Accords, was finally signed, it marked not only peace between Earth and the Varaxian hegemony, but a fundamental shift in how the aliens viewed humanity. 6. Months later, Eric visited the first Varaxian cultural center established on Earth. Inside, he found a special exhibition about human literature and film. The horror and war sections were prominently displayed with a sign that read, "Warning. These are not mere entertainment, but reflections of actual human psychological and tactical capabilities." Next to it stood Corvex, now serving as the hegemony's ambassador to Earth. "Your people have changed how we approach new civilizations," the alien told Eric. "We've begun studying the stories of every world we contact. It seems we've been missing important information." Eric smiled. "Stories are powerful things. They prepare us for our nightmares so we can face them when they become real." "Yes," Corvex agreed, all four eyes focused on a nearby display of classic human horror films. "We learned that lesson the hard way. As news of Earth's successful defense spread throughout the galaxy, other alien civilizations began to take notice of the small blue planet. They studied humanity's history and stories with new respect and caution. Humanity had earned its place among the stars, not through superior technology, but by turning its worst nightmares into its greatest strength.